Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on Trust TV, and this is the newspaper review segment of the program. And as customary, I'll be starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. Well, lead story there is what's replicated across, I think, all of that dailies. Supreme Court upholds Tinubu's election, dismisses Atiku Obi's appeal. Let's build better Nigeria together. President, judgment disappointing according to the PDP. We're shocked, but we move on, the Labour Party says. Wait till 2031, APC tells Atiku Obi. Verdict, a welcome relief, according to former President Muhammadu Buhari. That story is on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And that's it for the lead story on the front page of the Daily Trust.
Let's take a look at the Nation newspaper this morning. From the top of the page there, it says, Wike, I will support the president again. No regret for my actions. You'll find this on page 5 of the newspaper. Beside that, we see Ayedatiwa apologizes to Akeredolu and turn of events embarrassing. You find this on page 6 of the newspaper. Beside that, we see the Alafin, 5 Oyo Kingmakers, Sue Makinde and others, and how blue economy will boost the GDP. That's according to Oyetola. You find this on page 25. Below the mass, we see the triumphant of Tinubu. You find this on page 2, 3, and 4. Now, these are some of the stories in the Nation this morning.
And on the leadership on Friday, Supreme Court verdict. Tinubu looks ahead, woos Atiku Obi. Apex Court has failed Nigerians. PDP laments, Labour Party weeps for judiciary. This is the story that you can find on the front page of the Leadership newspaper this morning.
All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning. Below the Mazda, it says, Tinubu triumphs after 171-day battle. The writers there says Nigerians present wish list to president after Supreme Court victory, and judgment shocking dashed Nigerians' expectations, says the PDP and the Labour Party. You'll find all this on page 2 of the newspaper and more in the Punch newspaper this morning.
And for the Vanguard on Friday, presidential tussle ends. Supreme Court affirms Tinubu's election, dismisses Atiku Obi's appeal. INEC substantially complied with Electoral Act 2022 and Constitution. Election cannot be nullified due to unavailability of results on INEC's RF portal. Failure to secure 25% of votes in FCT Abuja not compulsory. Petitioners didn't prove allegations of rigging. We can't revisit APC's double nomination of Kashim Shettima. Tinubu's forfeiture of $460,000 drug money raised after respondents filed their process. And time to file CSU document, fresh evidence lapsed. Tinubu extends an olive branch to PDP Labour Party kick. Well, these are some of the riders underneath the lead story there on the Vanguard newspaper, and it contains some of the pronouncement by the judges when delivering the verdict of the case. At the top of the page, we see collective investment schemes rise 37.6% to 2 trillion naira. Below that, ritual 400 level Uniport student in police net for killing ex-lover. Beside that, we see reps probe hike in fares, poor service delivery in aviation sector. Individualism, greed, ethnic sentiments, others hampering Nigeria's progress, according to former Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi. That story is on page 8. And below the pictorial, we see court orders federal government, Southeast governors to pay 8 billion naira. Apologize to Nnamdi Kanu. Well, get more details of this story on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. And below that, we see fear of epidemic looms in police cells as court rejects remand of suspect in Lagos. Page 6. That story. And these are some of the stories on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper today.
Now, the major story in the Blueprint newspaper this morning says Tinubu to Atiku, Obi and others, says with Supreme Court victory, let's build our country together. The writers there says a verdict has rested agitations over the February 25th poll winner. Buhari, Ganduje, Akume, Akpabio and others hailed the judgment. Atiku, Obi's appeal lacked merit according to the Supreme Court, and we are alarmed, disappointed in court decision. That's according to the PDP and the LP. You find all the stories on page 6 of the newspaper. Below the headmaster, it says 63 million Nigerian workers yet to enroll with the PENCOM. That's according to the Chartered Institute. It says, you find on page 19, Oyo Kingmakers sue Governor Makinde over selection of new Alafin. Nigeria earns $5 billion from gas production yearly. That's according to the Vice President Kashim Shettima. NNPCL, others to pay more for imported fuel as banks shun financing refiners. Now this you find on page 21. Below the pictorial there we see troops neutralize 73 terrorists and arrest 182 in 1 week. That's a great win for the Nigerian troops. You find this on page 17. Shell to sack 200 employees 2024 to reduce headcount. You find this on page 22. The Access Corps reports that the gross earnings of 1.593 trillion naira in 9 months. Below the belt there it says November 11, Guba, form a bulwark against fake news. INEC urges the media to conduct 11 by-elections after Bayelsa Imo Kogi polls and partners NPC to clean up voter register. This and more on the blueprint this morning.
And we move to the Guardian newspaper. At top of the page, or rather below the masthead, we see Tinubu laughs last. Our Supreme Court affirms victory. And we see a quote from the lead judgment read by Justice Ian Okoro. Facts and documents which were not pleaded in the petition have no place in deciding the dispute between the parties. It is my view that there is no merit in this appeal and it is hereby dismissed. Justice Ian Okoro delivering judgment on the case on Thursday at the Supreme Court. That story is on page 6. Read more. Besides that, we see PIA, Senate investigates non-implementation exit of IOCs. Below that, court quashes prescription of IPOB as terrorist group. Well, that story is on page 30. Read more on it. Varsity student nabbed for killing dismembering girlfriend for ritual. Unfortunate there, it's on the Metro page of the Guardian newspaper on page 8. Federal government made 200 billion naira unapproved payment in 2019, ICANN reveals. Find that on the business page. Ethiopia had no interest in Nigeria Air, but the FG is pleased to help. Transport page 19. And also the big story, amid prohibition laws, domestic sexual violence thrive nationwide. And we see a pictorial that carries details and statistics, of reported cases of domestic violence, domestic abuse, sexual violence from 2022 till date. To get more on these details, you could get a copy of the Guardian newspaper to keep updated.
All right, the New Telegraph carries the presidential poll. Supreme Court affirms Tinubu victory. The virus dismisses Atiku. Obi appeals for liking in merit. And the Supreme Court has failed Nigerians. That's according to the PDP. Nation sliding towards dictatorship. That's according to LP. And ruling consolidates democracy, says Tinubu. It affirms Tinubu's victory. That was said by Buhari, the former president of Nigeria. Now, beside that, we see insecurity. Soldiers arrest terrorists and arms suppliers, recover weapons in Kaduna. Collaboration with foreign partners yielding maximum outcome. That's according to the military. You find this on page 3 and 28 of the newspaper. And we have more news on Mohbad's case. Says the reps summon Naira Marley over late singer's royalties and music rights. You find this on page 29. Political crisis. Ayedatiwa begs Akeredolu. You find this on page 4. Now, these are some of the stories on the New Telegraph.
And finally, on some of the newspapers that will be taken, we go to the Business Day newspaper. Lead story there says Nigeria's prize health as wearable device sales boom. Interesting story. Beside that, PDP Labour Party blast verdict as Supreme Court upholds Tinubu's win. Below that, we see Nigerians grown under weight of tomato prices. That story is on page 2. Ex-CBN Deputy Governor Mohalu appointed as APSS chair. That story is on page 7. And atop the page, we see Christmas airfares double as jet fuel hits 1,000 naira per litre. You could read more on that story on page 2, which talks more about the tortuous journey for Nigerian travelers to Dubai. All right, now we'll be joined by a reviewer in the studio who will be helping us discuss some of the stories on the front pages of this paper, of this newspapers this morning. We have in the studio someone who decided to be absent last week, Friday, for reasons that he would have to explain by himself, because I found out that he was coordinating distribution and collection of palliatives somewhere within the FCT. I'm talking about the editor of the new 21st Century Chronicle in person of Malam Nuruddin Abdullah. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
I do hope after the program you'd give me my own share of the palliatives. But then
I
again,
reserve my comment.
Before we get to the issue of the palliatives, well, the story that is replicated across all of the national dailies is the Supreme Court verdict upholding Tinubu's election. So let's start by getting your opinion of it, of course. Is it now Uhuru for the president?
Yeah, apparently, that is the end. I remember, one of the...
still appeal to God.
That is what Atiku said, I remember. The other time, the last press conference he addressed, they asked him what happens if the Supreme Court upholds Tinubu's election. See, I will appeal to God. As a politician, he knows, that these are processes. You can't have two people as president. There's only one. And he went through the litigation process, and it culminates at the Supreme Court. And learned justices, is that how you call them? Unanimous decision. So it may be principally, this is not the first time that Atiku particularly is contesting election, and he even went to court. You remember, he has been going to court since 2003. So he knows the process, and he's a Democrat. And I believe both Obi, Atiku, and even Tinubu, they want to govern the country. They aspire to govern the country because they want something good for Nigeria. So my understanding is this: at this stage, what else? Let's work for the country, like the president said in his statement he personally signed yesterday.
Perhaps the technical team could help us bring up the video where the president, addressed Nigerians on the occasion of winning the Supreme Court verdict. Perhaps when it's ready, we would play that, so we anchor the conversation on that. But then again, we saw the response of the Labour Party and the PDP. While the Labour Party is saying it has decided to move on in the direction which we'll be seeing in the coming days, weeks, months, and probably even years. The former vice president and the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, like you said, said he will take his appeal to God. But then again, don't you think, because the whole of this exercise is supposed to be in the interest of Nigeria.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has made its pronouncement, and as much as these individuals are in the opposition, don't you think it should portray a better light if they are seen, to be working in the interest of moving Nigeria forward? Because Nigeria, at a point, some would even say Nigerians are going through a lot of trauma right now, from what transpired during the election to the current situations that they currently face. So don't you think they, first of all, giving a body language that portends moving forward together as one people would have been a better response? I'm not saying don't become an opposition and don't critique what the government is saying, but I'm saying, wouldn't it have been better if they say, we've seen the process, we're not okay with the process, but then again, in the interest of one Nigeria, let's move forward?
I think that is what the opposition must do, because there is no other alternative. We are practicing a multi-party liberal democracy, so there must be opposition. The president or the ruling party, they are not infallible. And whatever happens, it has a lot to do with the action and inactions of the ruling party and the leadership. You remember, in 2007, Eradua won election. You remember during the inauguration, he admitted that, he knew that the election was flawed. But he pledged or promised that, he will take steps to amend and modify some of the apertures that gave opportunity for those flaws to be committed. And we saw what he did with the OS committee. You understand? So he did an interim national government. He flocked some of the opposition, brought them into the table. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, the moment you are called to join the party, you abandon your former, this issue of cross-carpeting, counter cross-carpeting and what have you. We need a robust opposition that will be constructively criticizing the government.
Indeed.
You understand? So I think it's one of the keys. We need the PDP to be in the opposition. Yeah. So that, the ruling party, whatever it does, okay, all eyes on us. The opposition, there must be opposition political parties. The civil society will be there. And the media, because, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So they need to be reminded, no, Mr. President, that's not right. Yeah, this is good, and what if you, but I'm not talking about like what people say, okay, to hook, line, and sinker, to be massaging the egos of those in power. That is not how it should be. But the criticism should be constructive, for the Commonwealth of Nigerians.
Okay, let me see if you would criticize the government now on this. The headline of the major story on The Guardian says Tinubu has the last laugh. I was thinking Nigerians should have the last laugh. And there's a video circulating currently where the president is, he made mention of all the hardship going on, about the food increase, the hardship on the fuel subsidy that has affected almost all aspects of the economy. And he said that, but there is nothing we can do about it. Like, he's literally telling Nigerians that you have to wait, endure this for the longest time. And Nigerians are already heartbroken, even amidst this victory. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, maybe I look at it from another perspective, particularly you say literally. My understanding is this. When he came, he initiated some reforms. Take the removal of the fuel subsidy. I'm an advocate of subsidy removal, you understand? Because in the longer run, for instance. But whether he removes it or not, subsidy has been removed more than 1 year before Buhari left with the signing of PIA. Only that Buhari kept on postponing the goalposts. Buhari should have removed it after the election. Understandably, they couldn't remove it before the election because they say APC may lose. But what about winning? There are almost about 3 months. The election took place March, April, May. But he left it as a cake powder. And now all the blames are going to the president. So every president has his own agenda. The agenda by Atiku, for instance, is towards the well-being of Nigerians, but the approach may differ from that of Obi, for instance, of that of Tinubu and what have you. So I think maybe my understanding of the president, that video you're talking about here, it cannot be ad infinitum. Do you understand? And particularly now, like you said, your jobs are, I think that's the other aspect, the funny aspect. Now your jobs are secured, you understand. But more importantly, this reform, after some time, most of these things will stabilize. More importantly, like I said, now he has been confirmed. He can now focus You understand? And you know what it means when you are elected? Go to certain state, for instance, now. Go to Nasarawa. The man has been removed by the lower court. Maybe there are two other, go to Kano, for instance. So there will be, even in taking decisions, there will be what happens if finally I'm voted out. But by the time that the final court, decide, then you can tackle the problems headlong. But what we are saying here is this. The reforms actually are painful, no doubt about it. I stand by removal of fuel subsidy. It's a fact. I'm not a labor person. I have to be reasonable and realistic with all those trillions that we are spending that nobody can be explained. Presently now they say about 33% of our fuel consumption has dropped. What happened? So the issue is this, I think, is now the onus is on Mr. President to prove to Nigerians, these reforms are public-centric. They are being executed for the overall good of Nigerians. So the onus now lies on him and the lieutenant he selects to actualize this his agenda or dream for the benefit of Nigerians. I think that's how I look at it.
Okay, so yesterday, Thursday, the 26th, there was also another judgment or another pronouncement rather that was made this time by High Court in Enugu State with regards to the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra as well as its leader Nnamdi Kanu. That story is on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Court orders federal government Southeast governors to apologize, pay Kanu 8 billion naira for rights violation. Now I'm going to read the lead of the story. A High Court sitting in Enugu has on Thursday asked the Nigerian federal government and Southeast governors to pay the sum of 8 billion naira to the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazin Nnamdi Kanu. The court also mandated the respondents to apologize to Kanu for the infringement of his fundamental rights. Similarly, the court declared as unconstitutional the proscription and designation of IPOB as a terrorist organization by the federal government and the Southeast governors. Reading, what do you make of this?
Yeah, it's a judgment of the court, I think, of the first instance. The federal government certainly will appeal this, or the Southeast governors, wherever the respondents are, and it will reach the Supreme Court. And already the other aspect is equally at the Supreme Court. The issue of IPOB, or Nnamdi Kanu, is purely political. I don't think you can solve this through legal gymnastics. Let's go back. How did these things come up? When Buhari was elected, sworn in, I think he was either in the UK or US. He was being interviewed by Christian Amanpo of CNN, if I got it right. They asked him, marginalization and what have you. He said this then, I cannot give attention, appointments, infrastructure to people that I got less than 5% of my votes. That is unpatriotic, and that is a political kamikaze. Why did I say so? President Tinubu now is the president of Nigeria. Whether people vote for him or not, he has been elected. It is his fundamental responsibility to protect the lives and property of all Nigerians, irrespective of their political leanings. He is no longer an APC person again. He is for all Nigerians. That was what happened with the Southeast people. IPOB violence trapped for so long because even the elders, they couldn't control the situation. We saw that in Borno. When people, particularly from the other side, are saying that what are the Borno elders doing that they couldn't tame Boko Haram? Now, what are the Southeast elders, governors doing that couldn't tame IPOB? You have to see something on ground. When you alienate people from political appointment, when you alienate people from having federal infrastructure. Buhari may be at the dying minute. The third Mainland, what do you call it, the second Nigeria bridge, for instance, was one of those things that he appeased them. So, from my own understanding of the situation, the current president is not like the former one. He understands the dynamics of Nigeria better than the former one. So I think at the right time he will address this issue of IPOP. I don't think he will repeat the mistakes, I call them mistakes, political mistakes by the former committed by the former administration for 8 years when you alienate certain group of people. There are so many ways of bringing them on board. With what he did now, look at the works minister. With this, you can easily convince the people in the Southeast this government means good. Work ministry is a great A ministry. Or the South. They were given the FCT. There are political give and takes. This thing can go ad infinitum. It's a political gymnastics. The issue of IPOP, Nnamdi Kanu, they are purely political solutions. And I hope at the right time Tinubu will address, because you cannot be wasting your energy and resources on what you will be stopped. Nigeria needs your attention. People, Nigerians are crying. The economy is biting harder. You need to focus. Infrastructure are failing. You need to fix them. And what if you? So the whole thing is political solution. Make more friends than enemies. You are the president. Whether one is an IPO, whether one is an OBA, whatever, you are now the president of Nigeria. You are responsible for their well-being. So I think the President Tinubu understands that better than the former one. President. And I think maybe this IPOP issue will be tackled maybe politically. So
let's talk about, the economy biting harder. We've seen here in the Blueprint newspaper saying that troops neutralize 73 terrorists and arrest 182 in 1 week. So we have been seeing the progress of the troops. We saw the one that the intelligence gathered from Niger, yes, where they ambushed a terrorist, a Boko Haram terrorist, was suspected, but with a lot of ammunition and all that, which is a proof of what he's been doing. But still, Madam Nura, there is still, like, it keeps increasing, the insecurity in the state. We see how students in the universities these days would lament on how on a daily basis they don't sleep at night because of the insecurity, even with how much the troops have actually put into. So at this point, it's quite scary. What should the government do? And what should the people do as well? Because everyone is a stakeholder in security.
First and foremost, the troops need political will of the politicians. When I say politicians, both at the federal and the subnational levels. Let me set an instance. It has been long since we had this particularly mass attack on dormitories, student dormitories, I want to say. But what triggered that Zamfara? It is because of the action of some people here in Abuja for purely political reason. You want to negotiate with these people. I said IPOP issue can be addressed politically. Yes, because they have a political ideology. They are crying of marginalization. What of the bandits? Who are you negotiating with? There was a research by, I think, a professor, was it in Stanford University or so? Within Zamfara State, he highlighted and mentioned about 317 bandit groups. Who do you negotiate with? What we read from the newspapers, particularly with the extended with the Zamfara state government and some elements in the federal government, is that those guys that attacked the federal university in Gusau, we are not called for that meeting.
Sit down.
So they felt left out.
You can see how these people think. The Northwest governors have decided and declared that there won't be negotiation with bandits. They don't have any political ideology. You can negotiate with Boko Haram, for instance. They have a leadership. You can't negotiate with IPOB. They have a leadership. But how do you negotiate with bandits? In one local government, you'll have more than 20, 30 groups. Purely economic purpose. So that is the issue. Political will is key. The military the military are saying no. Give us weapons. Train our officers and men. Remunerate us. We can fight this war. But some people here, particularly, I think that's why the president has to be very, very careful. Because of political reasons. Katsina said it. In Zamfara, Governor Yari has negotiated with terrorists, with the bandits. What happened? The current State Minister of Defense, when he was there, he negotiated with them. What happened? Have they stopped? No. You negotiate with A, B, C, X, Y, Z. The XY come out. That attack on Federal University was a reaction to the non-invitation of one particular chap. So the thing is this, and the military is making progress from these reports. Take, for instance, the Abuja-Kaduna highway has been secured. It used to be ground zero of banditry. Before the last administration exit, military facilities in Abuja were being attacked. That is history now. So, political will. I don't buy this idea of sitting down. How many people will you sit with? Empower the military. Kit them. Remunerate them. They can do it. But they need a political will. But when the politicians who are supposed to be superintending this are politicizing it, then we have a problem. Like the case in Zamfara. You went to a state, you gathered these bad elements, they came with their weapons, and you see how they were talking? The state governor, who was the chief security officer, was not even aware. You understand? So that's the situation. But if you allow the military to do their job, remunerate them, you know, intelligence gathering. Look at that the milestone recorded by the DSS or the security agent. It was a nipping the tragedy. They say about 150 AKs. The police command in Niger, do they have that amount of weapons?
About 3,000 ammunition.
Can you imagine?
In one house.
And the man was living, if you ask the neighbors, maybe it's a story that needs to be done. They'll say that maybe if he goes to the mosque.
Yeah, our reporter, there, Abubakar Kuti, spoke with the residents there, and they made mention of how he secluded his family from the community, so people don't really know about them. And then finally, someone boldly, from the community, step up, even though they said that they were scared of just going to the police because most times they don't take them seriously, or they report back to the person. So if what happened in Niger can be replicated in most of these states, particularly where this budget, these people can be nabbed before they strike. You understand? Even though they say there was an exchange of fire and the man flee, at least a milestone has been recorded. So the military and all branches of the services, should intensify as well as deploy sophisticated intelligence gathering mechanisms, which is key. They should not wait until they are ambushed or to wait for them to repel an attack. You see stories that the military repel. No. Take the war to these bad elements. Attack them unannounced. When you do that, there will be sanity. They either drop their arms, flee, or to flee. But now you are saying you are negotiating them. You are dealing with savages. And the negotiation, there is nothing progressive about it, Sager, because we keep seeing new bandits group coming out. Situations happening in Kefi. Now, students are saying they don't sleep at night. And they claim that they are, some of the maybe Fulani people in the area, in that particular people, invading them because some of them hear them speak the language and all that. So now we know that there are bad eggs in the community that are also coming out, creating some tension in the system. So what should the emir, the district head, because everything cannot go back to the security.
Yeah.
We need to also pay our own dues.
I think maybe like what happened in Niger, for instance. Yeah, the police, they're the closest security agency to the public, and we term it as very corrupt. Yeah, they have some corrupt elements, largely because of their recruitment processes. But take the DSS, for instance. The emir, the local government chairman, the district heads, the village heads, there should be a security. Every village, every neighborhood should have a security committee and ensure that only people of competent, or can I say people of unblemished characters are members of those committees. You can gather intelligence, and what if you are suspicious of a certain person, simply inform the security agencies. They can invite him to question him, because that's where the question. Or even if you see people living above their means. Maybe like I saw a report, young man, less than 25 in Katsina. He bought a car of at that time 1.6. He bought an Android phone. He bought some pairs of jeans, and he was doing nothing. What happened? He was the informant that invited bandits to kidnap the in-law of the then governor of Katsina, Governor Masari. They were giving, 40 million. They gave him only, 2 million or 2.5.
And he decided to start.
And the religious leaders have a lot of work. Let them, thank God now the matter has been rested. So enough of PDP, APC, LP, at Moxis and what have you.
All the P's.
All the P's, at least the ulamas now can now raise their nip down, and concentrate on educating the people. Good neighborliness is key than disturbing us with Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, and what have you. Let their congregate be conscious. We are brothers, neighbors. We all believe that there will be life after this life. This is what they should teach people. Not to be commenting on things that they don't even know of.
Well, a lot of work obviously has to be done by the president of the country, and thankfully the Supreme Court verdict of yesterday, has now cleared the way for him to commence governance, like he said, and he has called on all and sundry to be part of moving the nation forward. This is where we'd have to put a pin on the conversation this morning on Daybreak. It's been a lovely, insightful and educative conversation on the newspaper review segment of the program with Malam Nuruddin Abdullah, the editor at 21st Century Chronicle. Even though he reserved comment on my initial allegation to him, we're still thankful and hopeful that he will come back whenever we come calling for him to come and share his rich knowledge and insight on issues. Thank you for joining the program.
I will consult my lawyer before I comment.
No problem. I await your lawyer's response.